everybody. It's Alida Hernandez, Spanglish Entertainment News. I have an incredible guest today, an extraordinary guest, I really believe. She's had a really an incredible life, which she'll tell us more about. But she was married to an astronaut who was actually his name was Edgar Mitchell, and he was actually the sixth man who landed on the moon, which is incredible, especially me living near close to, I'm in the Space Coast right now, so I get to see the rockets launch and everything. It's amazing. So, without further ado, welcome Anita Mitchell. How are you today?
I am fine today. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's an honor to have you here. I was reading all your information and I'm like, wow. That's all I can say is, wow, what a woman.
You know, I tell people he got there because I got annoyed one day and sent him.
And you sent him to the moon?
Yeah,
Like the honeymooners?
yeah, exactly, Alice.
Alice, bing, bam, you're going to the moon.
But you know, when you're from a small town in Ohio and you marry a hero like Ed, you've got to come up with something clever every now and then.
So how was, I mean, that must have been an experience. I mean, I don't know. Tell me a little bit about yourself because you really have a well-rounded, I don't even know how to even say it. You came out of Ohio. You had three children that you raised you by yourself, correct?
Correct.
And then you worked at Disney. I worked at Disney for a little while as well, but back
Oh,
in
when did you work at
I
Disney?
worked there. Actually, I worked at the in 1999 for the Y2K promotion that was going on, and I worked in California over in
Ah,
Glendale. I was at the Burbank studio, and yeah, I didn't transfer over here. I could have transferred to Orlando, but I didn't do that. But yeah,
I,
I was a computer analyst there, supporting all the executive branch.
oh wow. I wonder if you ever ran into a man by the name of Jack Sayers.
I don't know. I can't remember now.
Well, I started with Disney before they opened.
Oh
They,
wow.
they came, it was kind of a fun story. I was doing some PR stuff, raising my kids, was with Gannett Radio, doing advertising and writing commercials and doing on-air stuff. And the recruiter, before they opened, they were still in trailers, came over to the beach, and I was doing PR for a dinner supper club that he came in and was recruiting, actually. And he saw me, and it's funny, Disney had a look that they wanted and in the beginning, and a lot of it was that Midwest stuff. So I had a ponytail and freckles, and he, he
Howdy
came over.
doody time, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. And so he came over because I was doing a little article called Brevard at Night, and doing the PR for the then the Carnival Club it was called, and it was a place that after the launches everybody went. It was very well known, and I took care of the VIPs, made sure that the entertainer Lee Karen, who ran the club and entertained, got their names. He'd introduce people, so we knew Disney was coming. So I greeted them and did my thing. He said, "How would you like to work for Disney?" All I could think of was Cinderella. I'm thinking, I said, "I don't know. What would I do?" He said, "Well, come over on Wednesday. We're in the trailers. I'm going to give you some tests." So I did that. I was going to go back to school in PR and marketing, but I thought, a job with Disney might even serve me better. So instincts better than my brains. I
Mhm.
went over, took the test, and they made me a convention coordinator in events, which I got my degree in hospitality working with Disney.
Wow, that's an incredible story. And so you've been in different areas. You did the PR and events, and that's what I kind of do now.
Yeah, well, you're very good at it.
Well,
And
thank you, thank you.
but I stayed in Cocoa Beach which is part of
Yes.
the Kennedy Space Center, Brevard County, because the kids went to Freedom 7. Alan Shepard's first rocket sits in front of that school, Freedom 7.
Ooh.
And 1959, probably people don't remember, but Alan Shepard was the first to go into space, not to the moon, but to test went out of orbit a little bit. It was a big deal. And that rocket got saved and it was given to the Freedom 7 Elementary School. And it was also a school subsidized by NASA. So it was better
Oh,
than a private school. And as a single mom, I really, I was blessed
yeah.
to have the kids go there. So I commuted every day. And I was also very active in the community. and the Chamber of Commerce. I was the first person recruited for Disney out of that area, and it was a big deal because it was a little town. We were sending men to the moon, but there was no social status. It was really a small, wonderful town and a great place to be in your 20s. It was a magical time for me, and especially with three kids and a single mom, because there was no status. Everybody, you go to a they didn't have black tie, but you'd go to an event, you'd see your hairdresser, the man that changed the oil in your car, Neil Armstrong, Gus Grissom. I mean, it was just
That's awesome.
yeah, it was a special place. So the chamber asked me if I could get Mickey to come to a Moonwalk Festival parade. They had one before every Apollo launch. And then in the evening, they had a big event to raise money for scholarships for engineering and what we call the STEM program today.
Right.
And I said, gee, I don't know. So I knew the PR person for Disney. And I asked him, and he said, we don't go, to local stuff. And I said, local? They've got 3,000 press people from all over the world. Oh, he said, that's right. Well, take the mouse, don't let him talk in his uniform. And they had a little luncheon with the mayor. I mean, we're talking a small town. I mean, it's amazing what we were doing in that area for being the small town feel. But there's a place called George's Steakhouse. It was kind of like a diner. And they
Hmm.
had the mayor and a few city council people and some corporate people and Ed Mitchell and Jim Lovell. And the interesting thing, I had met or known or interviewed or talked to, or they were in the club, every astronaut but Ed.
Wow.
I knew Jim Lovell and his wife very well, and and it was on my birthday, and Mickey did his little dance and sat me next to Ed, and so you know, after we were married, the press wanted to know how we met, and it got to be where nobody believes the story, so finally I had to come up with something funny, and they'd say, Mickey Mouse did not. I said, well, if it had been Goofy, I wouldn't have married him. How about that?
That was good. That's good. That's good.
And that
That's
was in
amazing.
1971. And
Wow.
I was the second wife. Ed had already flown. I mean, I watched the flight. I was at the VIP site, saw the flight, knew Alan Shepard, knew Stu Russo, the command module pilot on that flight. I just had never met Ed.
That's a special time. Those were special times back then. I was a little girl, but now I live here in Brevard County, so I'm starting to experience more of the Space Coast feel up here.
Oh, good for you. I
Yeah, I
love
saw the
that.
rocket. I saw it go up the other day. I don't know. I was like, is that the rocket? Why do I see it over here? I could see the flame and I could see it go up and
Yeah.
it went all the way up like till I couldn't see it anymore. And my husband actually bought me a telescope for my birthday. My birthday was like last week. And so he bought me a telescope. So I can't wait to use it and go check out the stars and watch the launches, you know?
Well, here's what's funny. When Rod called me, the collaborator for the book, um, somewhere down the road, I said, Rod, I've never asked where you're from. And he said, well, you won't believe this. I said, Medina, Ohio? He said, no, that would really be ridiculous. But he's from uh, Cape Canaveral.
Right. Sorry, my dogs were barking. Give me 2 seconds here.
Anyway, he's,
I started recording again. So no, I mean, those must have been just such special times. I mean, to see it now, I mean, to have experienced the space, right, exploration and being and married to an astronaut and those times was enormous, right? I mean,
it really was. In fact, I remember when my son was born, John Glenn had just gone up, and we were in Ohio at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And I think he may have been 3 months old, but I can remember sitting him on my lap with black and white TV saying, I want you to watch this. And I can remember the men around the rocket before it launched, of course, with these little white coats on,
mm,
and thinking to myself, I wonder how anybody ever gets that close.
wow,
And 6 years later, I moved to Satellite Beach, Florida, in Brevard County, and the rest is kind of history.
yeah, that's beautiful here, isn't it?
I love that county.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
I
special
was be
place.
south. I used to be down south, and it's just overcrowded at this point right now. So, Brevard
It
County.
is. In fact, when I finished the book, my son graduated from Florida State and stayed in Tallahassee. And my daughter's now up in Tallahassee. My next daughter, and so my grandkids are going to be up there. And I think it's like still like a small town. And West Palm Beach is getting too crowded.
Oh, West Palm Beach is beyond crowded.
Yeah, it is.
And I just the minute when you're on the 95 going south and you're getting towards West Palm Beach, you already know, oh, there's a traffic.
Yep. And especially now, well, I'm very proud the president's here, but they can have the traffic.
Exactly. Exactly. So, so after that, I had some notes here. We want to talk about the book, especially, and it's a great title. So how did you come up with that title? Did people used to tell you that all the time? You don't look like an astronaut's wife.
Well, it's funny. I told the story as a story in the book, and Rod said, we had a whole bunch of names. He said, no, that's the name. And truly, Ed and I would be in all different kinds of settings, whether it was, a social black tie in Washington, D.C. or Palm Beach, or it was a 4th of July parade in Iowa. And people would be we'd be in a receiving line, and they would introduce Ed with his full title, Apollo 14 astronaut, Ed Mitchell, and this is the astronaut's wife. And I always kind of thought it was funny, no, but they were very nice, but I never had a
Mhm.
name. Well, I did, the astronaut's wife. But about 30% of the time, people would say, "Really, you don't look like an astronaut's wife."
You're like, what's that supposed to mean, right?
I don't know, but it's always made me laugh. It never bothered me. I just always thought everybody has a perception. I Dream a Genie might have been
Yeah.
one that I popped out of a bottle. Maybe I had something on my head. I don't know. And but I always thought it was funny. And so I told the story in the book, and Rod said, there's your title. I don't
I don't look like
and,
an
and
astronaut's
being a
wife.
second wife, we stand on the shoulders of the original Seven Wives. I mean, I don't think no, I handled it all pretty well because I'm from the Midwest, so that grounded me in a certain kind of way. But I also lived there.
Hmm.
I wasn't, married to a first lieutenant with kids that I'm trying to get off to school, and ABC and NBC and New York Times and every worldwide news organization is on my front lawn. I mean, there was no book for these women, and I don't think we salute them enough. Louise Shepard was kind of the lead because Alan had already flown. Of course, Alan Shepard was also the commander of Apollo 14 on Ed's flight. Ed was the lunar module commander. And then Stu Russo was the circular, I always say the famous taxi cab that picked him up, brought him home. But I sincerely mean that, and I mentioned that in the book, that it should not it should not go unnoticed because those women are pretty special.
Mm, yeah, it's it's something that's incredible that you wrote this because I can't wait to see the book and read the book, so I can experience it myself. I know it's coming out now in March, correct?
March 21st, and if people want to follow the journey or pre-order it, they can go on anitakmitchell.com.
Perfect, perfect. So that way everybody can go, and I'll share the link as well so people can, the link to your website so they can
Oh,
make sure to
thanks.
see it.
Well, I wanted people to kind of enjoy the journey. If they buy the book, great, but come along the journey because the fact that I'm even writing a book is just, it was a reporter who insisted I had some stories to tell. So it's hopefully funny because from where I was coming from and looking back, it has some humor. And I also hope it lifts a few, maybe some young people and other people that if you can go to the moon, you can do anything.
Mm,
Um, it's also the forward I write is that it's not a Cinderella story because everybody has potholes. In this book, I decided to take the good and leave the rest because so I hope that that comes across with a spirit that people um, can smile about.
Well, I do say that I was smiling reading your story on your website, and especially that I listened to the song that was created for your book. God's Not Done With You Yet, I think it's called, or something like that.
Yeah, God's not done. God's not through with you yet.
Not through you yet. So I listened.
That was written 5 years ago by a very close friend of mine who is a fabulous singer, writer, entertainer, and it was a question that was asked of me when we did the overview of what I wanted people to leave with them. And I said, well, maybe a couple things. One is it's not what happens to you, it's how you react to it. And I had just come out of colon cancer, totally clean. And I said, and you know what else? God's not through with you yet. And she went in 2 hours, wrote that song. And
Wow.
I kept saying, get it published. I'm not going to do the book. Nobody's, she said, nope, I'm waiting for the book. And 2 weeks after I mentioned it again, I got a call. And so I'm so proud to have Monique McCall. She's
Yeah.
written other things. She's fabulous, to do this with me. And there will be a QR code on the front of the book so people can also order the song.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I did play. I played it before. I played it earlier today, and it really touched me just because it's a powerful song.
Hmm.
It's like a simple song, but it's powerful
Hmm.
because you feel the presence of God and to understand everybody goes through things in life. And today I needed a little bit. I woke up a little bit not on the right side of bed, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
And
we
some
all
days are good,
do.
some days are not so great, right? But you keep going.
You
And
do. And that's a motivator because you know you can't stop time. And
mm,
if God's not through with you yet, you're blessed.
yeah,
Go do some things that maybe matter. You can't save the world, but you can make a justifiable difference.
that, that's a good way to think about it because I'm always trying to do things to help other people. And
Mm.
my husband always
Especially in
tells,
today's world.
excuse me?
Especially in today's world.
Yeah, yeah. But my husband always tells me to not to forget about myself because I get engrossed in doing things and then I'm the one that suffers. So I can't because I'm not around, I can't help anybody.
No, you can't give if you're out of fuel.
Exactly, exactly. So
I
that's why.
hope to come up. I have some very good friends in Brevard. Brevard's a very special place before and after and during Ed, um, that live in Brevard County that we were young and we all grew up together. So I get up to visit them and hopefully one day I'll get to meet you when I'm
Oh,
up
I would
there.
love to meet
Oh,
you. Yes, let me know.
well, I think Rod's going to try to get a book signing there for me.
Oh, that would be great. I definitely will be there.
Oh, great. Love to
I'll
have
definitely
you.
be there and I can promote it for you, not a problem. Yeah, I try to do things. We're trying to do things here in Brevard County. My husband's a salsa singer. So, and we have the magazine, we have a physical printed magazine as well that we're trying to get through Brevard County. So,
Oh,
uh,
wow.
yeah. Yeah, so I do an entertainment magazine. So I will put in information about your book in there. I'm working on
Thank
March
you.
edition right now. And I do a lot of entertaining things. People who live local, like artists that live here that are doing things, a lot of community events that are going on in Palm Bay and Melbourne as well.
I found I moved there late 67, maybe 68. And Brevard has a way of attracting musicians. And if you look at some of the history, whether it's Ron John Surf Shop or whether it's the old Lee Karen Carnival Club, it's pretty special.
Wow.
The history of some of the musicians that played at the Carnival Club ended up with the Johnny Carson show, uh,
Oh,
Doc Severinsen's band. Yeah, the
wow.
Carnival Club was really someplace very
Wow.
special right there. What runs one street east of the ocean? Not A1A, but the street before it, or
Right.
the road before it. There
Right.
was there was a motel, and attached to that was Lee Caron's Carnival Club, and it had a huge, big pink elephant out front with big sunglasses. And so during the launches, many of the anchors from NBC or ABC would come and say, there's a carnival atmosphere because before the launch, of course, thousands of people were coming in and parties were going on and campers were out there on the on the parkway on the Merritt Island
Right.
Parkway.
Yeah,
So,
I hear a lot of people. I have a friend of mine, I guess he's somebody that we met. He drives the bus for all the tourists that are going up there. So
uh-huh.
he drives at sometimes late at night, depending on when the launch is going, because there's a lot of launches now.
Yeah.
I mean, I even hear the rumbling. Sometimes I'm like, what is that noise? Like you can hear the rumbling all the way, and I'm in Palm Bay, so you can imagine. I hear it all the way down here.
Oh, Pompey's beautiful though.
So yeah, it's being developed of a little too many houses now.
No, I know. It's going everywhere, isn't
They
it?
just built 3,000 homes.
Oh, Congressman Bill Nelson was from Pompey.
Hmm. Wow, look at that. All these people coming out of Brevard County that I didn't even know. I didn't even know how incredible this. I mean, I've been down Miami-Dade, Broward, West Palm Beach, like all that area, right?
Yeah,
But it's just a different atmosphere. It's a totally different
totally,
atmosphere.
totally different.
Yeah.
And yeah, if I weren't going to Tallahassee, I would come probably up to Cocoa Beach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't even gone over there yet. I need to go. I need to do a visit. I only remember that, right? I Dream a Genie, like you mentioned earlier. I Dream a Genie and astronauts. That's all I can remember. As a
Well,
grown up, a little
the
kid, that's all we watched.
the funny part is I watched I Dream of Jeannie with my kids. And one day I went to Lee, Karen, and said, they do all that in a back lot. We should have Barbara Eden here. I remember I was in my middle, maybe 27 years old, 25,
Mhm.
somewhere in there. He looked at me like I had three heads. He said, "What?" I said, "I'm going to go to the chamber. And if they'll let you be the chairman, let's have an I Dream of Jeannie day." He said, "Nita, there is no way you're going to get through to Screen Gems." So I went to the chamber and they said, if you can get Barbara Eden, you can do whatever you want.
Uh,
So, again, it's that not knowing any better. I pick up the phone, and as God would be my judge, I asked for the publicity director of Screen Gems. His name was Jeff Rose. She pushed the wrong button and put me directly into his private line.
oh,
And
look
he
at
answered the phone. And if you look up Jeff Rose, he'll be in Wikipedia because he's very well known for many reasons for in the entertainment business.
that. Uh-huh.
And so I said, "Hello, don't hang up." And I went through this pitch, and he passed away about a year ago.
Oh.
And we stayed friends forever. And I just loved him telling people that I introduced him to this kid called me and said something about people going to the moon and what. And so he bit, and we had a Barbara Eden day. And and following that, we took him, it was a launch, so Barbara Eden got to see a launch.
Oh.
She was in a parade. My son was 6 years old. He was in the parade with her.
Oh.
And uh they were so impressed that they brought the entire cast. 6 months later, they had a promotion. They got her married to Healy, and they said, "Nita, where should we have the wedding? We're going to do it in Cocoa Beach." And we had it at the Patrick Air Force Officers Club. And I
Ah.
got and I got to do all of that as a young kid, not knowing what day it was.
Wow, that's really
Well,
special. That's really special because I
yeah,
know I know the environment being, the things that I do here and those you were in time, you made history. You were in history.
I was, and I didn't even know Ed Mitchell. I mean,
Exactly.
I think
Exactly.
I was too dumb to know I couldn't, or something.
Well, you're living in the moment, right? So you're not even thinking about this is history in the making.
No, yeah, I think that the kids and I went out and watched every launch, though, long
Mm,
before I ever was, while I was still married to their dad. And I don't know. I think it's a matter of not pushing the river and I was always like a kid,
mhm.
I was so in awe of all of it. And the people that lived next door to me when I was with the kids when they were really little, her husband ended up being one of the top execs at Rockwell. And her name was Penny, and she got the biggest kick after I married Ed because she remembered me with the three little ones and you know Satellite Beach. So it's been a wonderful ride.
But and how about your children? Did they get into the same field or what did they land up doing? Did they get any of them in the astronauts or anything like that?
No, he adopted the three. They had an incredible impact, and luckily, I made sure that they stayed close to their natural father too. So
Right.
they had the best of both worlds. My son is very well respected in Tallahassee. He graduated from Florida State, summa cum laude with honors, and then got picked up by the being chief of staff for the chief financial officer of the state, and he just did really well. And now he's a partner in a very big firm. My daughter graduated from Florida State, and she now is in Tallahassee, but she ended up being city commissioner here in West Palm, and then she went to work as vice president of Everglades Foundation until she left and moved up north to Tallahassee. She was also in government. She was an aide to a legislator, and my little one is a partner in an investment banking firm. So
Huh?
but I've been involved in politics all my life. My parents had me stuffing envelopes So when I moved to Florida, we didn't have a Republican Party very much, but I was a YR and we got involved in the Claude Kirk campaign.
Mm.
And so I got to do some work for him. And then I've been involved, then I was chairman of the Republican Party ultimately. So it's been a fun ride.
Wow. Wow, I'm telling you, that's why I was like, wow. I'm like, where do we begin? So the book will have a lot of your stories in there that you've told
Yeah,
me. It's going to be incredible. Now, I see another thing, which I see here. You have a couple other things. I don't know this renowned psychic, but what is the connection that you have with Uri Geller? I think it is.
right. Well, Ed, when he flew, before he flew to the moon, but he started to become interested in human potential and the brain and the kind of the eyeball in before he flew. And he was a good friend of Dr. von Braun, who was father of rocketry. And they both were interested in dreams. How does that work?
Mm.
Excuse the noise outside my house. Let me shut this door for you.
Yeah, I don't hear it from here, so it's okay.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Good, because they're mowing the lawn.
Oh yeah, I know. Isn't that when you
Lovely.
live in South Florida, there's always mowing.
I know it seems like it. Anyway, so they started to explore those long before I met him. And then when he flew, I learned that he set up an experiment with a scientist at Duke University. He wondered if ESP, and we all know it exists, but he
Hmm.
wondered if it existed at long distances outside the magnetic field.
Oh.
If the magnetic field of the Earth had anything to do with people being able to predict or whatever. So they set up a scientific experiment by looking at seeing precognitive. He would concentrate at a certain time, and they would, and then he'd write down what he thought were looking at on Earth. And all I remember is to be able to explain it easily is I was with him when he did the interview after he retired with Time Magazine. And of course, it made all kinds of headlines. And they wanted to know, was it successful? And Ed said, well, you can't measure it only statistically. And statistically, chance would have caused it 1 in 1 billion times. So, in that sense, does it exist outside the magnetic field? Yes. And is it real? Yes. So, after he retired, he we were engaged. I moved to California, and he went to work at the Stanford Research Institute to explore this whole field from a science point of view. And as a result, brought Uri Geller, who was known in Israel to bend metal with his mind and do a lot of psychic things for the government. And so I brought him over here to literally do double blind scientific experiments where he couldn't manipulate or use magic or
Right,
do
right.
it. And he worked with several very renowned physicists and Dr. von Braun. And that for me,
Mm.
I kept saying we watch the corn grow. I don't watch spoons being bent, but okay. Uh, so I got to sit in the lab, and I help with the marketing because you kind of were selling the hole in the donut. I mean, how do you explain this in
Oh
1972?
yeah. And they have him listed, the Uri Geller that you were talking about. They have him as an illusionist and a magician.
He was both.
He was both, and a
Hmm.
self-proclaimed psychic. Because it's very hard for people to believe any of that sometimes. But he was trying to do. Edgar was trying to do science with it, right? He was trying to
Yeah, and he
discover.
did, and he did, and so some of that is in the book. It really, I mean, I sat at the lab and watched. I mean, Ed was not making money off of Geller being a magician.
Right.
And the magicians were the worst critic of Yuri's. But I
Okay.
can tell you a couple stories. One was when Yuri first got here. I was living with the kids, and I were living with Ed. We hadn't got married yet, and so we had Yuri stay with us. And I had been given a watch. I think it was 1973, and it was one of those watches with a lucite um, crown on it. They were kind of mod looking,
Hmm.
and a friend of Ed's had given it to me, and like the year before, and it had stopped, and I really liked it. And Geller was known for being able to fix watches. So I said, I have a watch. And again, I don't know that I believe. It's not about believing or not believing. It was like whatever. So I went up and got the watch, and I went to hand it to him. He said, "No, just put it on." So I put it on. He put his hand on it. I
Uh-huh.
watched. I watched the. I'm not crazy. I watched the hands move, and I never had to get a new battery for 4 years.
Huh.
Now
Hmm.
he did that a lot.
Hmm.
He did it for an audience at Stanford University of and they advertised it and said, everybody bring your broken watches or clocks. And they did. And about 100 of them he had put on the stage where he was. And you saw cuckoo clocks starting to make their
Wow.
noise. I mean, there's only so much that you can say it's not true. So they would do experiments like they would put one die in a box, and they would have it made somewhere else. They bring it to the lab and they'd shake it up and ask Yuri to guess which number was up. He just never missed. Never.
Hmm.
They had what do you call it? A 35 millimeter can, and they put a steel, little tiny steel, like a marble ball in it.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a camera running and a glass table so that they could catch pictures under and over and above. Excuse me. And ask him if he could dematerialize it.
Hmm.
And he did. And you could see the streak. I mean, really, me telling it's even Ed telling it has a lot more credibility. I mean, he's got two PhDs from MIT for one thing, so he had
Wow.
a lot of physics in it that
Yeah.
he could explain. The girl from Ohio is saying, "We watched the corn grow. I'm trying to figure out how a flash of light, and they open the can, and there's no magnetic ball there,
Right.
and they have cameras everywhere, and it didn't,
Yeah.
that takes a lot of magic."
Huh. It takes something. It's now, is that how the institute that came up? I don't know how to say it. No, Nodex? Is that what it's
Noetic. Noetic
Noetic?
is it means the science of knowing. Knowing.
Okay, yeah, I went to the website. So interesting what you're talking about with like the psychic. And there's a lot of things on the website that talks about, and there's a lot of events here, which I'm interested in because I'm always interested in learning.
Yeah,
So
and that was the absolute pricelessness of being married dad. He was, he was an explorer in many different ways. UFOs. Toward the end of his life, he worked with five-star generals, retired, brilliant people looking at the whole UFO phenomena. But and when you do something like this, in retrospect, the
mhm.
time I was just kind of watching, what am I doing here? Or how did I get here? Or, that was going to be the name of the book too. Um, looking back, I learned so much,
Mm.
much, so many different ways that I would never have been even, you have goals, you have dreams. I thought I had good goals, but things that I would never, ever have thought that I would learn about God, man, the universe, not as a given, not as a static, but rather open up a whole new world
Mm.
in a different way than Ed. It wasn't academic for me because I didn't have that kind of base. It was more intuitive.
Right, right, right. Because he got it. Because he dove into that space. It's kind of a scientific but intuitive at the same time. Plus, it's a
Yeah.
whole thing because
And
it's
and
the
he was
universe. It's the
he
universe.
was yeah, it is. And he was doing it in the 70s when now today, for instance, Ed, and I don't remember, I think it was Kaiser Hospital, but I didn't say it in the book because I'm pretty sure it was. He was doing he knew someone at the top at Kaiser, and he came up with this theory, typical Ed, that anything that could be measured could be controlled. And he wanted to take a look at biofeedback. So he did an experiment with Kaiser on blood pressure, and they would present a traumatic, evil scene, and your blood pressure would go up. And then they'd give you a pastoral scene. I know because I was a guinea pig. Um, a pastoral scene, and your blood pressure would go down. Today, meditation is known to help health. That in
Right.
part is because of Ed Mitchell.
Oh. Wow, that's that's
That he,
really
he put
powerful.
he put the science behind it by
Oh,
saying anything in the body that can be measured, why can't it be controlled with the mind? So some of it would be looked at as kooky. I would look at it as kooky. I think I met every nut, fruit, and flake in all of California. Because if you combine what he was
right.
exploring with the man, so you've got a guru and an astronaut and a cowboy and a test pilot. And I'm going, wow. Now,
Mm.
now I look wow. Then I was thinking, I guess everybody does this. And Rod keeps laughing. He said, you tell these stories like, well, everybody
Well,
does this.
well, the thing is, I didn't know. I've heard about meditation. I mean, I grew up as a Catholic, when I was young, and went to church and pray, right? But I learned about meditation later in life. So I have tested it over the last couple of years that just like just meditating, just like cleaning your mind out, just focusing on nothing, to
Yep.
re-energize. It does help your health. It's helped
It
me
does.
tremendously.
Well, that's why I say, in those early days, you were trying to look at the whole, from a marketing PR point of view, I was trying to sell the hole in the donut. How do you explain this?
Yeah. Mm.
NASA wasn't happy with this experiment because it was really out there. Um, the way of the explorer. I mean, Ed came from a small town in Texas, Hereford, Texas. Parents were not poor, but during the Dust Bowl, had cattle. Moved to Artesia, New Mexico, which is like 20 minutes, maybe that, from Artesia, New Mexico, where the first UFO sighting was. Years ago in the 40s.
Yeah.
But the place is still famous. I just think the whole thing is magical. And now that I've talked to you a little bit, let me share something that Ed, you know how Frank Sinatra used to always sing Nancy at the end of every song?
Yeah.
Well, Ed had a quote at the end of every speech that I, from the first time I heard it, loved. And so anytime I was in the audience, he would always end with this verse that he got out of the Sanskrit. Now, the girl from Ohio had no idea what that was either. Um, but a lot of wonderful things came from that translated. And it goes like this: God sleeps in the minerals, awakens in the plants, walks in the animals, and thinks in man. And I just think that, I mean, 50 years later, I think of it often.
Mm. We're all connected. That's what he was saying. We're
That's
all
what he was
connected.
saying. And he used to talk about consciousness as a capital C.
Yes.
And it's I have no idea why I'm here. This is just, and even doing a book. I mean, I kept saying to Dan Moffat, who was the one of the editors of the paper, and he followed Ed and I, and then he was a sports writer to begin with, and I was on the sports commission. But he would love the space program, and he would, like you, great interviewer, wasn't interviewing me, but he'd push a button. And of course, I have a story. And he just absolutely insisted that I said, I have not invented the Salk vaccine. What am I going to do a book? He said, no, it's not about you, Anita, but your stories. He said, think about this. You act like just anybody does this. You're telling me one day when I ask about Geller, oh yeah, he came to the house for dinner one night, and Von Braun was there, and Rod Serling and Arthur C. Clarke, and it was just a fascinating evening. And I always drank tea. He was at the other end of the table and told me to take my spoon out of my teacup, and it was bent. He said, "You told me that story like everybody does that, Anita. Are you thinking about this?" I said, "Well, yeah, I guess it was probably."
You had some special times in your life. You didn't even realize the moments
No,
that were
I,
memories that are going to become memories that now you can tell to other people, which I think
yeah.
is so important. I think that's so important. I guess building community, that when people like you have experienced these things can share it to the public and learn a little bit about you. I've learned so much from you today. It's just been an incredible conversation with you.
Thank
And I
you.
hope one day in the future I'll meet you. I was in Boca just last week.
Oh, please call me when you're up this way. I would love to meet you.
Yeah, we were just down there last week because I went to see my kids for my birthday and my mother's birthday are 2 days apart. So,
Ah, nice. Well,
so
I'm glad you're in Florida. I don't know how you found me, but thank you so much for your time and interest. I mean, I had really didn't know.
what we're going to
I
talk
knew my
about.
kids would buy the book and maybe a few friends, but I'm finding that maybe more people were interested than what I thought.
Oh yes, because I'm kind of in awe because I'm thinking about everything, and now when I went to the institute and I saw what that was, and I started reading some of the tabs, and I'm gonna look at the video later of Edgar, but I just said, wow, wait a second. This connection was more than just a book. It interests me because the astronaut stood out to me, right? And I like Space Coast. I'm a techie, so I'm like, this is interesting. Let's see what this goes, right? So, but I didn't realize all the things that you've been involved with and how much Edgar worked in so many different spaces. And the space of consciousness is something I've been studying for a while now, connecting the brain and what we can control, and exactly what you said and what he was trying to do. And I've been studying that lately because I've had people in my circle that are studying it as well.
Well, if you ever want me for nothing to come and do a lecture or sit in a sewing circle and share, I am more than happy to do that.
Oh, that would be awesome. I have a whole group of ladies that would love to see you.
Oh, I'd love to
We'll
see
talk
them.
about that soon.
Well, you're special, and I can tell you just there's been a few interviews like this where people really did their homework. It's very hard to tell the story if you haven't done a little bit of homework. But first of all, out of maybe the 20 so far that I've done, 80% are good ones. The 20% don't know this program. So they start out with, well, were you scared? And no, I wasn't because I was second wife. By the way, you probably know WEZY in Cocoa. That was the station that I worked for
Oh,
as a,
okay.
as a young kid. Gannett owned it at the time. Actually, Al Newharth, who was chairman of the board of Gannett, came to Cocoa Beach. We did not have a newspaper. This is for you,
Mhm.
and he started Cocoa Today before he invented the USA Today. And
Oh.
he bought a radio station at the same time, this little 5,000 watt station. And I had gotten divorced and didn't know what I wanted to do. And the person that owned an ad agency said to me, if you could do anything you wanted, what would it be? And I said, I'd like to be Barbara Walters. He said, come with me. I do a lot of business with a radio station here. Well, they weren't going to let a girl on the air in 1966 or 7. And so they said, we have a sales job on the beach. There's not a lot of companies out there, so we don't have anybody covering it, but we've got a lot of bars, restaurants, and banks. And I said, if I can write my own commercials and do the voiceover, I'll take it. And from there, Cox picked me up, and I did a lot of voiceover ad work because I'm from the Midwest. I have no accent, and I just got finished after 6 years doing a podcast here. I love radio, and so WEZY um, hired me with my three little kids. And
Mhm.
then years later, Al Newharth has a house, or did have, beautiful house on the ocean called the Pumpkin Seed.
Mhm.
And he bought a house about a block away for a guest house called the Pumpkin Patch.
Mhm.
And after one of the shuttle launches, after every shuttle launch, after every launch, Al had a big VVVIP party. And of course, I never had gotten invited, but I got invited with Ed. And that's in the book. And it's really funny because it was 1987 and Carol Burnett was there, Johnny Carson was there,
Wow.
Tom Brokaw was there. And I ended up meeting Jimmy Buffett.
Oh.
And he was there. And I was a big fan. And I'm standing there talking to him. And Coco Today snapped a picture in 1987. And 15 years ago, I sold my ad agency PR firm, and a cruise line came along and asked me. They had a cruise ship here at the port, and it was new. It's called Bahama Paradise, and would I take on being their chief consultant? And I thought, gee, you know what? I think I'd like to do it. Just popped up, so I did that, and lo and behold, 3 years ago, who buys the cruise line? Margaritaville, and they brought me with them. So I just left Margaritaville and Jimmy Buffett. And what are the
Ah,
odds?
interesting that you said that. I was going to ask you about that. I did see about that. I went to do a little tour in Margaritaville about 3 weeks ago.
Where? Here?
Yeah, right there at that Riviera Beach.
Yeah. Well, that was my little ship, and they had and Margaritaville brought me on because they they needed somebody that really knew the community, and that's my forte. So I got to do events and brought them to the forefront, even better than with Bahama Paradise, but it's the same ship. So for 10 years, I did the cruise stuff and really loved it. And then a big private equity firm just bought them
Oh
in
yeah,
last July. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do the high touch, you know,
right.
things that I know how to do. And the chairman, the CEO that hired me said, well, you're probably right, Nita. We're gonna start to build a fleet, and we're not gonna be, they gave me everything I wanted in the way of sponsorships and just built this whole region for them. And they're not gonna do that now
Mm,
because a private equity, they moved the headquarters to Orlando. I could see it coming. And I
mm.
didn't never have a boss until I went to work for Margaritaville. So I had a great run, met Jimmy a couple times. In fact, I used his chiropractor, but I dragged my kids to all the fairgrounds every time he played. I was a huge Jimmy Buffett fan.
Wow.
And
I
that
know he just
picture,
recently died, right? It wasn't too long ago.
yeah, no, it was a year ago, December.
Yeah.
And that picture was on my wall since 1987 in my little office, wherever I lived, for my VIP wall. I took a picture of the picture, and I met the man that headed up all of Margaritaville Entertainment. And he was on the ship one day, and I ran into him, and we started to chat. And I hadn't told anybody, but Joe and I got to be friends. And I said, Joe, I want to show you something. And I showed him that picture with the script on the bottom that the media put. And he said, can I take a picture of that? And I said, sure. He said, I'm going to see Jimmy in about 2 hours. So he showed it to Jimmy, and Jimmy said, tell her to get it blown up,
And he'll
or,
sign it.
and I'll sign it for her. And I said, no. You tell him to get on the ship. I want it before and after. So I saw Joe later, and he said, Jimmy said, you got a deal. And he passed away before I got to do that.
Oh,
But I love that story. I loved him. I loved everything about his music. My kids loved it. So, I just feel like I've been blessed. And so when finally I got okay with doing the book and knowing that I could tell the story that wasn't about me, but things like this to let people know you never know, but don't waste your time. You ain't gonna get any more of it.
yep, exactly. Time is precious. I tell people now I have lived more than I have to live left. Right?
Yep.
So
I always tell people I'm in the dash, and I'm gonna go in standing up, I think. And then whatever. I told the kids on the grave site, it's here she lies, perfect at last. They just laugh at me.
Oh my God. But that's what you want to do. You want people crying. They want a good memory of you. And I'll have a great memory of you. I mean, you have stories. You've lived a life. You lived a full life. You've done a lot of experiences that are go down in history. And
It's just always when I hear people like you that I really know are authentic, and you are, I just, I just wonder. In fact, the other day, Rod was telling me people had pre-ordered the book, and they were all my friends. So until he got to this last name, and I said, spell it. So he did. I said, now how in the world? I said, I graduated. He was in my high school graduating class and got me through geometry my sophomore year. He's teaching physics at Columbia. I haven't seen him in 30 years. How in the world did he end up getting the book? He said, I don't know. Maybe Facebook? I said, I don't, maybe LinkedIn? I said, I don't know. I have no
yeah,
idea.
because nowadays, if you're, I find everything on the internet. So if I'm looking for something, I will find it.
Well,
Um,
they knew that I'd married Ed because I went back to my class reunion in Medina,
right.
and I was one of the few people that left. I mean, everybody pretty much stayed but me. And I always got the award for coming the furthest. I laughed. But the comments always were very surprised because you haven't changed. I said, well, let me tell you this. How would I change when I graduated third from the bottom of my class? I made straight A's in everything from the right brain, flunked everything from the left brain. I got a scholarship to the University of North Carolina summer school for drama, and I did a little summer stock. But married, divorced, three kids. Why would I be puffed up? Please tell me.
Yeah, but it's great to stay humble. I always say I stay humble in everything I do. I do things from the heart. I believe that everybody has a story that needs to be heard. Everybody has a story. You went
You
through a
do.
different life. I mean, you're telling me things I don't know any about this stuff about Brevard County. I'm originally from New York, and but I've been here 25 years now. So to hear these stories, it makes me intrigued. I'm going to go searching on the internet for things now just to learn more about the area. It does. It makes I like again. I like to learn, so it just gives me
You know, that's why you're special. My dad used to say, you don't need, if you want to go to college, fine, but do one thing for me. Always be curious. Greatest advice I ever got because I am. How come? Why does that work that way? And
exactly.
and I actually did pretty well in physics. And Ed said to me, that's because you're curious. And if you had had a reason why geometry was necessary or the history of geometry, you would have done better. You've got to know there's got to be a reason with you. I
Yeah,
always felt like
yeah.
he I said, really? He said, yeah, it has nothing to do with your IQ.
I guess that's true because I always have to have a reason. I had a problem in school because I was bored and I didn't find any
Uh-huh.
interest in what they were doing. And the only class that I enjoyed was math. So everybody's like, "Why do you like math?" I don't know. It stimulated me, the numbers, and my grandfather was an electrician and a radio tech back in the what 70s, right? He took a correspondence course and he passed and he would help and I used to help him fix TVs with the tubes and take apart the radios and I would ask him what's that, the transistor and all these different things he used to do. So he made me very curious about that. And
Well, see, you come by it naturally. I think, first of all, I said to Rod, maybe this is my life is an accident would be a good a good title. Um, I'm not so sure that would be the right word.
mm,
It's just it's a lot to do with what Ed was studying. I mean, I
hmm
can't articulate it from an MIT PhD, but I mean, here's a guy that was a test pilot. He tested the X-15. He was a fighter pilot in Korea. He graduated number one in the Navy post grad school. Um, he helped design the lunar module for Grumman. He was the astronaut they picked to come over when they needed it tweaked. Him and Fred Hayes. I- He, I mean, it
yeah,
boggles my mind the amount of intelligence.
yeah.
And I always think people that are that. Somebody asked me on an interview the other day, could he have a conversation with Musk, or was he like Musk? And I said, degree, not kind.
Mm.
Yeah, he's very similar. And yes, he could have a conversation, but Musk, much more bigger degree. I mean, he didn't invent anything that to the extent, but the brain worked the same way.
Yeah.
He used to say after every speech, did they understand me? And you'll laugh, but he used the word in 1973, paradigm. And I'd never heard it before. And so it was a Rotary speech. And he said, how did you like it? I said, was that two dimes? What's a paradigm? And now, of course, it's an everyday word. But I think sometimes he married me because he was dating a couple movie stars. I mean, this is silly. He probably married me because of that people skills, common sense. I don't know.
Hey, he
I
fell in
often
love with
wonder.
you. That's why he fell in love with you. You
But
had
I
something
was I
special.
was totally something completely different than anything he'd experienced for sure.
That's what my husband says about me. He said he always says that he fell in love with my mind more than anything because of, you know.
Oh, that wasn't true of Ed, I'm sure, because I must have asked him how come and why 100 million times. But it was an interesting trip, and that's why I said I will. I was a little bit nervous because there were some big bumps in the road. But as long as I told Rod, I said, I'll do it as long as I can do a forward to say, this isn't a Cinderella story. There's ups and downs in everybody's life, but anybody can tell the dark side. And I was offered a lot of money to do that. And I said, no, thanks.
Mhm.
And then there's enough of it for one thing. And anybody can do it. Doesn't take any talent, doesn't take any soul or heart or whatever. And who cares?
Exactly.
But there's too much good to talk about to have to smudge it up with that stuff.
Yeah.
So I said to Rod, I want to do that disclaimer so the media doesn't go after some headlines that I had nothing to do with, but I don't want to. And I just tell them I won't do that. And people have been very respectful because Ed did too much good, and you can find something negative about everybody.
Oh, of course, of course. But the good is what is more important, and that's what
It
builds our
is.
community
It is.
and brings people together. And so I hope that I think your story is going to bring a lot to people and just inspirational. I think it's inspirational. Different things,
Gosh,
diversity that you went through, and the accomplishment that Edgar has left to this.
unbelievable. Just really, and as we go, as Musk does what he does, and as we go through the world with neurosurgeons knowing so much more about the brain and potential, it's amazing to me how much I admire and have learned. And Ed knows that. He knew that before he passed away. I mean, we were divorced, but we we did right. I did the good thing that I should have done. I mean, that you should do. I took the good, left the rest, and
Mhm.
so he was part of our lives. And we did. We were with him when he left us, and we did the memorial with great pride. And I have not gone that far with any of the other interviewers, but you're not your typical interviewer, because all that he did is true. And I don't, and I told him, I said, someday I'm going to do a book, but just don't worry, there won't be any, telltale stories in it. He said, I wouldn't expect anything else. And so it was good. And everybody said, oh my gosh, I don't know how you did that. I said, no, for you forgive, for you take the good and leave the rest for you. Why do you want to live in the muck?
Exactly. We don't want to hear about that, even though some people like that stuff. I don't.
Well, that's because they don't like themselves.
Eh, that's a
So if
whole
they can
other conversation.
Yeah, if they can find somebody to screw it up, then it makes them feel better. That's my theory. And what do I know? I don't have a college degree, so
We don't need a college degree. You have to have the school of life, okay? And
yeah,
because
I got a
you
little of
had
that.
because of Edgar and his association, right? It's all that's why I say my mother always used to say you are with who you hang out with, or something like that, right? So you always have to
Oh, yeah,
surround.
you're judged by by the company you keep.
Exactly. So you have to, I always say that you have to be careful who you surround yourself with. And growing up, sometimes, when you're young, you're rebellious. You're like, I don't care. I'll hang out with whoever I want, kind of thing.
Right, right.
And then you start learning, wait, that person's not good. I don't like that
Yeah,
person. Go
exactly.
away. And I'm still learning that like now. Now my circle is small
Oh
because
no, I've got a desk drawer full of whole asses and asses. And you don't want to land in there. And the older I get, I just have no patience for unauthentic people. I don't judge them. I just don't want to be around the karma drainers.
Exactly, exactly. That is the best way to say it because that's my understanding right now too.
And my most fun, all before the book, when I was ever asked to speak as so-called leader in the community, and they wanted, they like the women that are doing something. And I love to, if I can leave people smiling with a little bit of a spirit lift, it makes my day. It does a lot more for me than I'm sure it does for the audience. But,
You
you know,
you sound an incredible fun person, that's for sure.
thank you.
So I want to say we've been on here for a while. It's been awesome. Thank you so much for your time and all this information, all this knowledge that you have passed to me and to everybody out there because I
Will
feel
I get a
special.
copy? Can I
Oh
get a
yes, you
copy of
will. You'll
this?
get a copy. I'm going to edit it and everything, and then you will get your copy.
And does it go online?
Yes.
Oh, it does? So I can
Yes.
share it?
It'll be on YouTube and on my website. And
Oh, I'm
yeah,
excited.
yes, it will.
Okay, all right. If you ever come down, I've stopped my radio show was What's Your Story? And you have a great one. But if I pick it up again, I'd love to have you come down and be my guest.
Oh, thank you.
Or we'll do
Thank you.
one of
Oh, I have
one
a
of
lot
these.
of, I have, well, there's a lot of things you don't know.
Yeah, I
I
can
have the
tell.
podcast. I have one podcast I do is called Rebooted Mindset. I started that 8 years ago after I had a stroke, and my life has changed ever since. So that's why
Oh
I
man, what I
started it.
love that. Oh wow, you're special. And
So,
this now the station goes from Indian River to Key West. So it's
oh,
got a pretty good audience availability. But
so
I
happy.
just didn't have time to do it anymore. I've done it I did different shows for them for the last 7, 8 years.
Hmm.
and I just had to take a break because I don't know what this is going to hold. But
Yeah.
if I pick it up again, I would love to have you come, or we can do it like this. I've done,
Yeah.
I just got to interview um, Mike Love from the Beach Boys.
Oh,
He was, that's one of my favorite groups, and he's going to play here at the Kravis Center. They are,
oh,
and he's the
nice.
only one original.